Hello and welcome to Two Yellows Make a Red, where we discuss some of the key talking points and refereeing decisions from the world of football. As ever, if this is your first time checking us out, remember to like the video, subscribe and leave a comment. You can also follow us on Twitter at Make a Red.
Hello and welcome to this week's Two Yellows Make a Red. Wee bit different this week. We're just going to have a little roundup of the weekend, talk about some of the big games that happened, some of the refereeing decisions that happened, and just have a jolly old ramble about football and life and COVID. We're not going to do any of that. We're just going to talk about football.
Hopefully not COVID, given this is supposed to be an escape from COVID for everybody. Jesus.
Yeah, we just censor the word COVID. It's not applicable here. But yeah, so just a wee roundup about the weekend. I'll start us off with one of the bigger games, the Merseyside Derby. Between Liverpool and Everton, in case you didn't know where Merseyside was. So, yeah, big game as always. Every season it's a rather big. I say big game. It usually lives up not to be a big game, but it was a big game this time round. Well, in terms of it's always usually a 0-0 or a 1-1 or somebody cries. But this one was particularly interesting given Liverpool's recent form. And that recent form continued to decline as they were beaten 2-0 by Everton. An Ancelotti masterclass, as some would say. So first question I'd like to ask you, gentlemen, in regards to the Liverpool game. Now, this will be a bit out there, but do we see Liverpool finishing in the top 6? Because they are currently sixth in the table. And obviously, given their form, doesn't look like they can get points from anywhere just now. So I'm posing the question, top 6 finish, yes or no?
Comfortably top 6. I mean, never say never in this season, but I think the top 3 are fairly safe. And then it's that 4th place that's up for grabs. West Ham looking really good at the moment. But obviously, Liverpool are as capable as anyone. The title holders are putting a run of wins together. So I'd say 4th is definitely up for grabs, but they will at worst make Europa League. But I wouldn't be surprised if they got 4th.
Okay, so you're going for top 4, Ryan?
Certainly top 6 at absolute worst.
Okay, Ryan, fine.
Yeah. I agree with Ryan. I don't see Liverpool falling outside the top 6. That would be quite something if they did, but yeah, I don't see that happening. I genuinely think eventually they will get their form back at some point in these last 14 games to go. I think they will string a few wins together eventually, and hopefully they can get some of these players back for injury before the end of the season to help them. But I'll say they'll get 4th, but they could easily get 5th or 6th, but I just don't see them falling at the top 6. It's not impossible, but I just don't. They would need to continue losing game after game for that to happen, because was it Everton, West Ham, and I don't know who's 7th just now?
So Everton's 7th. They're on the same points with Liverpool, and then it's Villa on 36, Spurs on 36.
Yeah. I think we'll see Villa starting to slip over the next few weeks because Jack Grealish is out injured. I don't see them improving without him. I think we've seen yesterday when they lost to Leicester, they missed him a lot, and he offers so much going forward. Creates pretty much anything for nothing for them as well. So yeah, I think I'll stick with Liverpool finishing 4th.
That doesn't really matter because we're going to win the Champions League and still finish with more trophies than Man United. So, sure, we can finish 10th. Doesn't bother me. But, based on current trajectory, I don't think we'll finish in the top 4. And given that Henderson's about to miss the next month, that probably doesn't help.
Yeah.
Kind of piggybacking on what Alistair was banterously saying there. Obviously, Liverpool, well documented, have an injury crisis. If that was to somehow further deepen, I think that's the only possible way they finish outside the top 6 for me, because then they probably would have to prioritise Europe, and maybe their league form would suffer as a result of that. I don't know what you guys think of that.
I, for one, actually, again, you might think I'm a moron, but
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we definitely do, and that's before you even open your mouth.
That's par for the course, mate. You don't have to say
Yeah.
anything.
That's it. Yeah. So
Even if someone's seen like one episode, they know that. Anyway, go on.
Literally, actually, last week, shout out to my dad when you said the man words thing. As soon as you said that, everybody was like, "Okay, it's fine. He's the clown of the group. We've got that done. Roll dusted."
what? Oh, the man words. Oh, yes, that famous saying.
Just use my man words.
We need to get enough T-shirt. But yes, being the moron that I am, I don't think Liverpool will finish top 6. I'm going to predict 7th or 8th. Just looking at the teams below them, and I know that Spurs and Arsenal and Villa are all having somewhat tipsy-turvy seasons, but unless Liverpool start to find their feet again, I think they could just continue going down. If they do prioritise Europe as well, I think that will come into play. I think more injuries could happen, and generally I think the form in the league might just be taken to one side. So that's my bold prediction. But I think they have to prioritise Europe now. It's their only chance now of a trophy. It was interesting to see that when they played Champions League football against Leipzig, it did seem like they were very much back to their old ways. So it's an odd one that they can't then mirror that in the Premier League.
I think like if you offered me Champions League success but finishing 8th in the Premier League, I'd take it. Like because it's just that this season's just a write-off with all the injuries we've had and the problems. Klopp rebuild in the summer. If we won the Champions League and finished 8th, then we get. But even if we don't win the Champions League and finish 8th, Klopp can do a bit of rebuilding, get Van Dijk in that back, and then we've got a free crack at the league next year where everybody else is in Europe. So it's just a write-off. Like the team's just burnt out.
Yeah, absolutely.
The one.
Carry.
So I was just going to say, I agree with what Alistair was saying. I feel like having won the first league title in 30 years, Liverpool fans won't really care. And the one team we failed to mention in regards to the top 4 is obviously Chelsea. Bit of a disappointing result at the weekend there, but they've looked better under Tuchel. And just on the thing about obviously Liverpool looking better against Leipzig, that's definitely true. One thing I read was that it's because obviously Leipzig themselves like to come out and attack, and obviously Liverpool are able to exploit that. Teams that generally come to Anfield won't play like that, and that's more like why Liverpool have been struggling. Just something I read.
Mm-hmm. It's the squad. The thing is that the last 2 years, first of all, teams have had a fear factor coming to Anfield, and the other thing is that ever since the 1-1 draw at Old Trafford 2 seasons ago, that was the first time that somebody managed to play properly against Liverpool's front 3 and shut them down. That was when they had Wan-Bissaka and Shaw, I think, pressing high, and it was basically pinning Salah and Mane back. But the difference is that Liverpool just figure out how to get by that. But when you have an injury crisis to the extent that we do, you don't have the tools to get past the wall that teams have set up. So teams have figured out how to beat this Liverpool team with these injuries. That's part of the problem. And the biggest factor is Van Dijk's injury and subsequent injuries to centre-backs has forced Klopp to take, in his eyes, to take Henderson out of midfield and put him in defence. So there's no one driving the game forward. So it's kind of just teams have figured out how to play against us, and because of the injuries, we don't have enough options to get past it. I firmly believe if Jota hadn't been injured, we wouldn't be in as bad a situation because he was brought in to be the extra tool in the box if the front 3 got burnt out. So I don't know. I think people like to try and make it into a big thing and say Liverpool are bad champions, but it's just burnout and injuries. Nothing more than that.
Yeah,
you don't become a bad team overnight.
No, I would agree with that. It's just been
should we talk about the game?
Aye, if you want, mate. Absolutely. So the only
we don't need to talk about the game, Scott. Let's just forget that.
Yeah, let's just move on.
Major talking point that for me as a referee is the penalty decision that was given against Trent Alexander-Arnold. I'll kick off by telling you boys that I believe it was a penalty. And the reason I gave said penalty Well, straight off the bat, sorry, I'll say that it's a tricky one in the sense that I can see why a referee wouldn't give it and would give it. So it's one of those that can be given either way. The reason I think he has given it, so when you watch the footage through, Calvert-Lewin is taking a shot on target and Alisson spills the ball. Trent comes flying in, misses the ball completely, but in doing so creates a blockade or an obstacle rather for Calvert-Lewin, who then subsequently trips over him. Now again, people could argue he should have jumped higher, or what could Trent have done in that situation? He's on the floor, but by being in that position and missing the ball completely, he's created that scenario where he's become a tripping hazard. So when Calvert-Lewin then trips over him, he's effectively stopping the promising attack that it was. Penalty for me. But a very weird one. It's not a situation I can remember seeing very often, ever. I actually can't even think of an example to give you where it's happened before, but yeah, penalty for me. I'm assuming we have differing views, so have at me, as they say.
Yeah, but surely it is. If you're saying that's a penalty, then surely it has to be Dogzo, because from what I gather from what you're saying and what I've heard other people saying, Andrew, is because he impedes Calvert-Lewin's run, and as you say, Alistair has spilt the ball, it's essentially an open goal. So Calvert-Lewin is more likely than not going to score. Now, I should just point out, for me personally, that is never a penalty. I understand the arguments for it and why people say that. And even saw on like Sky Sports News this morning. You're welcome for the shout out, lads.
Wow.
I know, major publicity here for them. And they were saying, like, I think it was obviously Dermot Gallagher. He was saying it should be a red card, and I'm just, I find that bewildering. Yes, it probably does deny a goal scoring opportunity, but I mean, it's an accident. Trent's on the floor. Like, what can he do?
I don't agree with a red card. The opportunity to score the goal has been taken with a shot. So he's taken a shot on target. Alisson has saved that. And it's not like Trent came flying in to take him out. He's come flying in to get to the ball, albeit he's missed it, but their intent there is to get the ball. It did surprise me, therefore, that he didn't get a yellow for it. I don't agree with a red card, though. I think a red card would be very harsh. And I think the penalty is harsh as it is, as I've said, but I'm trying to tell you why I think the penalty's been given. Because effectively, Trent's made the mistake. He's missed the ball. You know, he's mistimed his challenge. I will use the classic line. If that
blockade. It's not Star Wars, mate.
If that happens in the middle of the pitch, it's a foul. They're going to give it as a foul. So I'd like to apply that into the box as well. But there you go. There's my tuppence on it.
I watched it back a few times and I don't know why, but in my head, I thought it was a penalty.
Okay, anyway, back to ignorance.
Swiftly moving on. What about that Man City game, Alistair?
Do you know what it was, right? Do you know what it was? Mm-hmm. It was the kind of glitchy penalty that Scott Fleming gives away on pro clubs when he slides in to make a tackle and his guy's standing up and the opposition player falls into it. And the game's like the glitchy ref on the game gives you a penalty.
Nah, it gives it.
That is a perfect analogy, Alistair. That is exactly what it is. You slid on FIFA. Your guy stayed on the floor. The striker was bundled over him, and the penalty. The referee's like, "Yeah, penalty, lad."
Right. It's a harsh penalty, but I can, as I say, I've tried to describe to you why I think it's been given.
Sorry to cut you off, Scott. Why do you think it's a penalty, mate?
I just thought when they showed the highlight of it, I just felt that obviously he's no timed his tackle properly and he's continued to slide whilst Calvert-Lewin's still in front of him. And when Calvert-Lewin's like sort of struggling to stay on his feet, you can see Trent's leg lifting up, and that's what catches Calvert-Lewin's ankle, and then he goes over. So to me, I just thought it was him getting tripped up.
So if the Rovers concede that in the 89th minute, a 0-0 game, you're like,
Oh no!
okay,
Didn't get me wrong. I'm gonna be. I'm not saying that it was an out and out clear penalty all day long. I'm just saying that it was harsh. But if you look at it slowly, I genuinely do think it is a penalty.
And if I'm honest, I didn't see much protest from Alexander Arnold either. He didn't seem to.
No, I thought he accepted that he
accepted
made
it,
a mistake and tripped him up. But
If it was an absolute howler, the players would obviously be up in arms. But okay, Ryan, so if you want to talk to us about the Manchester City game.
yeah, certainly, Andrew. Not too much to report on this one. The game, as I'm sure most of you have seen, finished 1-0 Man City. That marks their 18th win in a row. So I think it's 6 wins away from beating a world record for the longest win streak. Wasn't their most vintage or convincing performance, but to be fair, after they went ahead, Arsenal never really tested them too much. So City didn't need to be at their best. City went ahead very early on, a ball in from Mahrez into Raheem Sterling of all people, who scored a header at the back post, towering over Rob Holding of all people, which begs a lot of questions in itself. But yeah, not a very exciting game for the neutral, but 1-0 City and the fantastic run goes on. What did you guys make of the game? Did you see it at all, Scott?
yeah, I didn't watch it live, but I watched what highlights there was in the game. As you say, there wasn't too much happening. City controlled the game as they do, possession-wise, and Arsenal really never threatened that much. And as we've mentioned, it's 18 wins in a row. And was it 24 you said? Is that them equaling or beating?
I think 24 is them tying. I think you need 25
Tying.
to beat the all-time record.
6 more wins to tie it. The next 2 games look pretty winnable because they're both at home. So there's them to 20 already. You start to question who is going to beat them or stop them for even a draw. I don't see, and a stat I'm just about to bring up, they've scored 45 goals in these 18 wins and only conceded 6. And they've kept 12 clean sheets in them 18 games as well. I mean,
I think the even more scary aspect of all that is the fact they've done it without like Aguero, their main striker. In fact, they've done it without a striker at all, really, half the time because Jesus gets rotated, and then even more like scarily still, that's been without De Bruyne a lot of the time. Like it's pretty mental what they're doing.
Yeah, it just shows how they're the only team that has shown any consistency this season, and it's proven that the fact that they're 10 points or 9 points clear of United.
Yeah, 10 points clear.
So it's just proven.
Sorry, Scott. Scott, how many points clear of United are they? Just to double check that.
I think it's 10.
10. So you're telling me that Manchester City are 10 points ahead of Manchester United.
Yeah.
Interesting. God, that must sting, Ryan.
Only 1 loss in our last 19 games. A lot better than Liverpool.
Yeah.
Yeah, damn. I suppose I'll cry into my European Cup in Premier League. Last time you won the Premier League,
we've got 3 then to cry into. We're doing not too bad. And just just the 20 league titles.
Ryan, the last time United won the league, you still didn't have pubes, mate. So simmer down.
I still don't. Nothing's changed.
But no, yes, City. I don't think anyone could argue it's City's title. I can't see anyone catching them. I mean, their only competitor is pretty much United. Also Leicester, but I do think Leicester are too liable to drop a point here and there to teams they shouldn't drop points to. So, quite the record. So, it does beg the question though that when I know De Bruyne played in the Arsenal game, but when himself and Aguero do establish their roles back in the team, do we see them remaining dominant? Probably, but I think it would be a bit amusing if they were to then start dropping points, because then you're literally pointing at two people that have come into the team. But yeah, not much more to say about that. City's title. Don't think anyone can disagree with that, apart from Ryan. But Ryan will try and pitch some argument. But the other thing as well that I think is impressive with City, just quickly before we move on, is obviously Pep really wants to win a Champions League with City. So the fact that he's remaining successful in both competitions just now is because that was what I think changed their season last season, is they focused too much on European football, and when that came crumbling down, it was too late for them to then catch up. So it's interesting to see that he's managed to juggle both this season. So we'll see what happens with that. Okay, so the next one we'll dip our toe into Alistair's West Ham game. West Ham versus Spurs, the London Derby. So your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a 2-1 win for West Ham. It was the biggest takeaway for me was the fact that Fantasy said that Antonio was injured, so I took him at the fantasy team, and then he scored 5 minutes in.
Yeah, I wish he would saw that.
But he opened the scoring, and then Jesse Lingard made it 2 after half time. I think it's his 3rd goal in 4 games. Yeah. And even though Spurs got him back with Lucas Moura, I think West Ham were deserving of the win. So they're now up to, I think, they were 4th after that game anyway.
Yeah.
And it's their best start to a season their best season at this point since 1984. So I think you have to consider them contenders for top 4. And yeah, what's your kind of thoughts, Scott?
Yeah, West Ham just every week keep defying the odds almost. That I keep expecting them to go on a run of 3 or 4 losses, because, as you say, Antonio wasn't supposed to be fit for it, and other than him, they don't really have a recognised striker. So you always question, are they going to ever have the depth up front to keep scoring goals to get them 3 points every game? But they seem to find a goal out of either Bowen or Lingard, as you say. But I thought in this game, I actually just thought it was a game of 2 halves. I thought West Ham deservedly went in 1-0 up at half time. Spurs at the back, Dyer and Tanganga are just looking at each other going, is your man? No, he's your man. No, he's your man. So the fact that they two got caught with Antonio free in between just summed it up. But second half, I thought Spurs played a lot better, created quite a lot of good chances. Bale smashed the bar with like a half volley for about 25, 30 yards. It looked like it was going top peg, but unluckily hit the bar. Spurs got a goal back, thankfully, for them, thinking that they were going to spark a comeback. But in the end, West Ham probably deserved the win, but Spurs might be disappointed with their second half performance that they actually didn't get something out of the game. I think once it went 2-0, West Ham were happy to just sit in and contain that, but Spurs had quite a few chances and were a bit unlucky in the end.
Yeah, it seems to be 2 teams going in completely different directions in terms of momentum, and obviously just in terms of the table. Just things seem to be clicking at West Ham. I mean, I've said it before, I'll say it again. If they get an injury, especially Antonio, I would be interested to see how they react. But apart from that, if they keep going as they are, no reason they couldn't get European football, even 4th place. As for Spurs, I mean, Mourinho was asked if there's a crisis. I don't know what you guys think of that. Maybe that's a topic for another video. He said no, but they're having a very bad run of results. That's definitely the case. And I think even more worryingly, as Scott kind of alluded to, I mean, Mourinho teams historically have been built on a strong, watertight defence. They don't even seem to have that. There's just no organisation, no communication. It's just very, very worrying trend. Maybe the one sort of ray of light at the end of the tunnel for Spurs is that Bale does seem to be hitting some sort of form. He scored a couple of goals, got a couple of assists. There was a run against Man City that was like the Bale of old. So maybe that's one thing. But yeah, pretty worrying time for Spurs, the Spurs fans, and for Mourinho.
I've never been a fan of Eric Dyer, so to see him performing so poorly, it makes me happy. But crisis, I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily call it a crisis, but they definitely need to get a new defence in place there. And it's weird. I like your point about Mourinho and always having a tight defence and how it's seemingly just not happening anymore. So I wonder if it's a change in tactics by Mourinho or if the players that he's asking to defend just can't defend. I think it's probably the latter, but yeah. One thing I will say as well is, for me personally, David Moyes, manager of the season. I know the season hasn't finished yet, but given that he's taken a team that are probably mid-table most seasons to fourth place, and he's kept them in the top 6 for a number of games now, is quite remarkable given his budget, the players he's got, etc., compared to, for example, City. So yeah, I definitely think he should be one of few contenders for manager of the season, given what he's done at West Ham. We'll touch on this game quickly because there wasn't much in it. It's a rather boring game, but Burnley's draw with West Brom. The only thing that came out of that was another Mike Dean red card. I swear he just lives by red cards, but I actually think we got this one spot on. Did I feel it needed to go to VAR given his position on the field? I think he should have got it straight away because it was right in front of him. However, VAR is there for that reason. And I do feel they got the decision correct. The decision was a sending off for a deliberate handball about 30 yards from goal. This one, it was definitely dogs though, because the next movement by the striker is away on goal, 1-on-1. So if you hadn't deliberately handled that ball, he's away. So it was dogs though. So yeah, agree with the red card. Does anyone disagree with that one?
No, I think it was. I think you were saying about where Mike Dean was placed and why you were surprised he had to go to VAR. I think that was a confidence issue with him currently. The fact that he was so in the spotlight over the last couple of weeks, I think he just, for himself, he probably just wanted to triple check that it was the right decision, and it wasn't then. So fair play to him, and hopefully it'll stop people getting on his back for just handing out cards for no reason. But no, I thought it was a red card. The boys moved his hand in a motion that it's not a running motion, which he's meant to be doing. He's extended his arm out with a running motion. So yeah, I would say it's a red card.
Grant.
Not terribly much to add, just two things. Firstly, are you absolutely sure it was Mike Dean, Andrew? Because, you've got a record for blaming him for everything.
No, definitely one. I couldn't mistake that bald head.
Watch last week's episode to get that joke. And secondly, I agree with what both of you said. The definite red card for me doesn't take too long. I guess the only thing you could possibly come back with is it's effectively on the halfway line. How dangerous or how much of a goal scoring opportunity is that? That is possibly the only thing, but yeah, apart from that, pretty easy red card, I would say.
Yep, the only thing I would touch on with dogs over there, Ryan, is there is no other defenders. It's literally him and the striker. So if that defender doesn't use his hand, he's away on goal. Now, by all means, the keeper, he's going to take a shot on target. The keeper might save it, but it's a denying an obvious goal scoring opportunity because he's away and there's no defenders near him. I believe it is just 1-on-1 with a defender, so it doesn't make you question why there's such a high defensive line, particularly for West Brom. I didn't think West Brom were a high-lined team, but yeah, no, I think you got the spot on.
Yep, so our last game to finish off our weekend review is the Milan Derby. So it finished AC Milan 0, Inter Milan 3, for those that didn't know what the score was. I felt the scoreline actually didn't reflect on how the game went. Inter dominated the first 10-15 minutes, got their goal, and almost looked like they were happy to just sit at 1-0 and just let AC Milan come and attack them. But I thought once it got to half time, AC Milan had kind of changed up and went a bit more direct, trying to hit Ibrahimovic with a few more long balls and work for set pieces, basically. And I mean, if it wasn't for Handanovic, and I think they had 3 corners in the space of like a minute, and Handanovic made like a world-class save from every single corner from an Ibrahimovic header, which, yeah, maybe another goalie might not have saved them. So Milan, AC could look and think they were a bit unlucky there, and then go down the other end, and yeah, it's 2-0. So it was a classic counter-attack, and yeah, it's been on my mind for the last few weeks, and call me crazy, but I genuinely think that the strike partnership of Lautaro, Martinez and Lukaku could genuinely be one of the best strike partnerships in Europe currently. I don't know what you guys think of that.
Well, I'm glad, Scott, that having only watched the bite-sized highlights, I know you also watched the director's cut. We both got a similar interpretation of the game. Yeah, it seemed to be just one of those games for Milan, particularly Ibrahimovic. Just couldn't hit a barn door, and Handanovic, as you say, was in inspired form. Oscar, can we just take a minute to talk about that second Inter goal? Just a beautiful counter-attack, beautiful passing move. And Christian Eriksen, who's hardly had a sniff at Inter, was quite pivotal in it. So, in terms of your question about Martinez and Lukaku, I don't know the exact stats off the top of my head, but yeah, I'd say they'll have to be up there for sure. In terms of a duo, a tandem, I can't think of too many others that have that sort of understanding.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
If Scott watched the director's cut and Ryan watched the bite-sized one, then it must have been the latest Star Wars movie for me, because I just skipped it. But it was, the one thing I will say is it's refreshing to see a Milan Derby at the top of Serie A after a period of both teams being out of the mix for a while, and a sort of stalemate in Italian football where Juventus have won, I think, 9 titles in a row. So I'll admit I didn't see the game and I haven't even watched the highlights, but I am glad that the Serie A title and the Scudetto might be going back to Milan for the first time in a while.
Yep, nothing much to add, apart from I can't think of any other strike partnerships, Scott, so very good point about that. They do seem to bounce off each other. I think the only one you could maybe compare it to is Son and Kane, albeit Son isn't a striker. But
I was going to say they're not really a striker partnership.
No,
they've got a good partnership, but they're no strikers. Is what these two are, out and out number 9s, and they play. Was it a 3-5-2 interplay usually?
Yeah,
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a proper 2 up top. Whereas anybody else that plays 2 up top, I don't know anyone that's got currently a better strike partnership than these two. Anyway.
Well, Scott, let me stop you there, mate. You want to talk about playing 2 up front? I mean, Lautaro and Lukaku are great and all, but what about Wooden Barnes?
You know, I was about to make a Burnley joke. I don't know why in my head. I was about to make one, and I stopped myself.
Because they're probably one of the only teams that still play 2 up top in the Premier.
Yeah, it's going out of fashion.
It's good to see that my Burnley joke wasn't wasted. So thanks, Ryan.
You're welcome, Andy.
Last thing I'd say about the Milan game is the lack of yellow cards. Usually tends to be a wee feisty game. This, and there was only 3. So it's good to see the
lack of fans might have had something to do with that. I don't know.
Well, I've seen a photo of the fans outside.
Yeah, that was quite something.
It was a bit hectic, but yeah. Alistair's point is, it was good. It's good to see somebody else apart from Juventus, possibly winning the title. I mean, it's not out of reach for Juventus, but it looks more than likely it's going to be one of the Milan clubs. So
Yeah, I think they said after the game was that Inter are now 4 points clear of AC Milan. So that's now 2 games that AC Milan need to hope that Inter drop. So I've not seen the fixtures of both of them to finish out the season, but surely both of them have got to play like Lazio, Atalanta, and Juventus as well. So it'll come down to them games. I don't see either of them losing to like Benevento or that. It'll be down to the games against like the European positions will be the difference.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Whenever Inter or AC are playing Benevento, get 3-0 Benevento on, 100%.
Yeah.
The one thing to point out is Juve are actually winning tonight, so they go. I think that would put them 8 points off Milan with it, Inter Milan, that is, with a game in hand. And we've seen the likes of Napoli crumble from Juve's late season pressure in recent years. So I know I was saying it'd be nice to see the title go back to Milan, but it's far from an inevitability.
Oh yeah, definitely.